Hey guys, it's Katie. Welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be doing another tier ranking video. I did one of these a few weeks ago where we ranked all of the series that I've read and it was really fun and you guys seemed to like it, so I wanted to do another one. But this time I wanted to do standalone books and I wanted to do books that I've read a little more recently. As I was making that video, I realized the majority of the series that I read was when I was younger. I just read more standalones now. So I chose a theme. We're going to be ranking some like mystery thrillers and also some horror novels today. I have 25 to go through and we've got a good mix of adult and young adult. I'm excited. It should be fun. And thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Skillshare is my favorite online learning community that has a very wide variety of classes. I've been using them for about the past year where I've been taking their writing and also business and finance classes. I also recently started learning sign language from them, which has been super fun. But actually the class that I'm about to start is called Unlocking Your Potential: 5 Exercises to Build Creative Confidence. This just popped up on like my home screen and it looked kind of interesting. So I went in to see what the different classes were called and it looked like something that I could really use in my life right now. So basically it's helping creatives overcome these common roadblocks like self-sabotaging, perfectionism, procrastination, inner critics. These are all things that I've been struggling with, especially because I have a book coming out next month. So yeah, if you want to try out Skillshare, I'll have all of their info linked down below in the description. The first 1,000 people who click on my link will get 2 months of Skillshare Premium for free. So you can try them out, see how you like them. If you need any class recommendations, feel free to reach out because I have tried so many of them and I've liked every single one that I've tried. And even after the free trial, they are super affordable. It's less than $10 per month. So make sure to go check out that link down below in my description if you're interested. But other than that, let's get straight into the tier ranking. So I created some different tiers than we used in the last video because I struggled a little bit and didn't really think ahead. So the tiers that we're going to be using today are very solid, pretty good, kind of meh, and not a fan. And the reason why the top tier is like, because I feel like that's my reaction every time I read like a really good thriller when there's like a really good plot twist. There's no words for that kind of emotion. You just get to the end and you're like, So that's what that tier is for. And then very solid is like, yeah, would still really recommend, but it didn't like, blow my mind. Pretty good, just kind of in the middle. Kind of meh usually means I was bored, and not a fan either means it was really bad or just like wasn't a good fit for my reading preferences. So down here we have the books that we're going to be going through. We're just going to go in order. And if you're looking at some of these and thinking like this is not that genre, this is not a good fit, I know. I struggled a little bit. I was going through my Goodreads shelves and I wanted like a good variety of books. So some of these, the genre is a little bit questionable. I'm aware of that, but let's get into it, I guess. So the first one we have is This Is Where It Ends. This is a young adult book. It's about a school shooting, but it does kind of read more like a contemporary novel, I would say. So I did really enjoy this one. It's not what I was expecting from it. It being about a school shooting, I thought it was going to be one of those like within 24-hour books and it was going to be more of like a thriller. This one was more character driven and there were a lot of flashbacks, so it wasn't as fast paced as I was expecting. It was just really sad for me. So I think we're gonna put it in pretty good. I still liked it, but it's something I have a hard time recommending because it is such like a sensitive topic and it was just like overwhelmingly sad and not super adrenaline inducing, I guess. Next we have How She Died, How I Lived. This book was written by one of my college professors, which was pretty cool. Yeah, this one again was, I think I'm gonna put it in pretty good. It wasn't super memorable. It was the first book that I read in 2019, so it's been a while since I read it. Again, very like character driven and kind of focused on grief from what I remember. Our main character was like contacted by this guy and apparently he reached out to a bunch of different girls and so she didn't go meet him but someone else did, and the girl who did was murdered. And so now this girl is dealing with the fact that like, oh, that could have been me. So yeah, pretty good. Just not super memorable for me. We have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is one where I know the genre is kind of iffy. Kind of horror, kind of like dark urban fantasy, I would say. This is an adult book also. I know she wrote a lot of young adult books and people seem to be confused on that. I'm gonna put this in very solid. I have a whole review of this. I guess that's on my Patreon page because this was one of our book club picks. This wasn't what I was expecting it was going to be, but I still liked it. So it is really dark. I feel like it had a lot of missed potential, but I know it's going to be the first book in a series, so I'm still holding out hope that the following books will be really good and be able to explore all of the parts of the world that I really liked. We're holding out hope that it's going to get better from here because I did think it had a really interesting world and I liked our main character and I did like the creepy, dark, Ivy League school, secret society vibes from it. It was a good time. Next we have The Lying Game by Ruth Ware. I'm actually gonna put this in kind of meh. This is an adult thriller that I picked up because I read a different book by this author that I loved, and this book was just like such a letdown in comparison to the first book of hers that I read. This is about a group of friends who come back together once they're like in their 30s, I think. They were friends in high school, and one of their dads was the art teacher at the school and was murdered, and you know they're keeping secrets, and you're just like kind of diving into their past. The story, like, it's perfectly fine. The writing is fine. The story, plotting, everything is fine. It's just like the story itself didn't interest me. Like, I wasn't that into it. Also, if you've read a lot of thrillers, I don't think it's gonna surprise you very much. Merciless by Daniel Vega, we're gonna put in not a fan. This is a young adult horror novel. And this is 100% of a case of it's just like not a good fit for my reading preferences. This definitely leans more towards like torture horror, which just like I don't find scary. I just find it gross. So this girl is new and she gets like taken into the popular religious girls group. They basically kidnap the misfit of the high school and put her in a basement and torture her, saying it's like an exorcism. It's really weird. It's the first book in a series and I know a lot of people love this. It's just not the kind of horror that I really vibe with, so wasn't a fan. But then we have Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. It gets to go in. I love Dark Matter. This is more of like sci-fi. It has to do with like quantum physics and parallel dimensions, but it definitely reads like a thriller with the pacing and stuff. Oh my god, the ending of this book was so freaking good. This is something that, again, I've read like several years ago and it's still so memorable to me, and it's something I recommend all the time, and it's something I kind of want to reread. It was a ride. I really enjoyed this one. Would highly recommend. Then we have Lock Every Door by Ryley Sager. We're gonna put this in very solid. It wasn't quite at like that top tier, but I still thoroughly enjoyed this experience. This is an adult thriller about like a historic apartment building in Manhattan, and this young girl goes to be an apartment sitter there. They have a bunch of weird rules that she has to follow, and she realizes there's something really weird going on with this apartment building. This one was really a hit or miss with people. People either loved or hated the ending. I loved it, but this was definitely just like really fast and fun to read. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson goes into This is the first young adult thriller I think I've ever loved this much. I have a hard time with young adult thrillers. I really love adult thrillers, but young adult ones I am frequently disappointed with. This one, I also have a spoilery reading blog for on my Patreon page because this was also one of our book club picks. I loved this one. This is one of my favorite books that I've read so far this year. It's about a girl who's investigating the murder of like the pretty popular girl that happened in their town like 5 years ago. You're never gonna guess the ending. That's what everyone told me before I read this book. So then of course the entire time I was reading it, I was trying to guess the ending. And I couldn't freaking guess the ending. So many good twists. I loved it. Listen to the audiobook. It was a good time. Anna Dressed in Blood by Kendra Blake. This is another young adult kind of horror thing with ghosts. It's been so long that I honestly remember like nothing about it. I think I gave it like a 4 out of 5 stars when I first read it, but honestly I think that was just me being like nice because I didn't rate books poorly when I first started rating them. It was kind of meh. It really wasn't for me. I didn't read the next book and there was like nothing memorable about it. The Arrangement by Robin Harding is gonna go in very solid. I loved this book. I talked about it so much last year. It's about sugar daddies and sugar babies in New York, and it's so like trashy, guilty pleasure kind of vibes. So much fun. I read it in a day. All of the characters are stupid and unlikable and make horrible decisions, but that's why I find it so fascinating. I personally just like really like reading about unlikable characters. Then we have Panic by Lauren Oliver. We're gonna put this in pretty good. Again, this one possibly questionable with the genre here. If you've seen the movie Nerve, it's kind of like that. These kids in a small town all go through these like weird tasks. It's a competition. I remember them like walking across something like really high up, like a tightrope or something. Basically, they go into a cage with like a tiger at some point, I think. Yeah, so nothing super memorable, but it was still like a good enough time while I was reading it. One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. We're gonna put it in kind of meh. I know this is a super popular young adult thriller. I think this is the book that kind of started the huge wave of young adult thrillers that we've been seeing lately, at least like the popularity of them. And this book I read when it first came out before it got super popular and before I realized people liked it so much, and I put up a negative review for it, which has gotten so much more popular recently, and I should just like private that video at this point. I'm tired of people telling me I'm wrong for not liking it. I just found it boring. I didn't like the twist at the end. it wasn't for me. Her Pretty Face by Robin Harding we're gonna put in kind of meh. I went to read this after I read The Arrangement. This was also our book club pick. I also have a spoiler rereading blog for it on my Patreon page. This one wasn't for me. It was very like underwhelming. There was seemingly no like climax to the book or twist at the end. There just like wasn't any payoff with it. You might like this if you like psychology and are interested in like sociopaths and stuff. I just felt like there was something missing from this book. Like I got to the end and I was like, that's it. Neverworld Wake by Marisha Pessl. We're gonna put in pretty good. I still thoroughly enjoyed this one. This is a young adult book kind of similar to Groundhog's Day. This group of friends all die and they're stuck repeating the same day over and over again, and they learn that only one of them is going to get out of it alive and they have to unanimously decide who gets to live. I read this because Night Film by Marisha Pessl is one of my all-time favorite books, hence the category. Night Film is an adult psychological thriller. Neverworld Wake was her first young adult book. And I still prefer Night Film. Night Film is one of my all-time favorite books, just like ever. Night Film is about a journalist who's looking into an occult horror film director's daughter's alleged suicide. I never know how to describe this book, but it's written like multimedia format and we're following this journalist who's trying to salvage his reputation that was ruined by this same director while also looking into this director's life because he thinks there's something weird going on. And so we're getting to explore this whole like underground horror culture because this director has this huge following. This is everything that I love in a book, and that is, I think, an unpopular opinion because almost everyone else that I recommend this book to has hated it and thought it was really slow and boring. I loved it. There's Someone Inside Your House by Stephanie Perkins. We'll put in kind of meh. It wasn't terrible. This is another adult, young adult horror. If you like just kind of basic slasher movies, this is kind of like the book equivalent of all of those like teen slasher movies. There's nothing really special about it. It kind of goes just with all of the horror tropes. Kind of a fun time, but nothing super special. Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. I'm gonna put in not a fan. I didn't hate this book. It's the first book in a young adult mystery thriller series. It just was not for me. Like, it did not click with me whatsoever. I went in with such high hopes for this book and I was just so bored, and I just really could not have cared less reading this book. And I feel like that's the one thing that a book can't come back from. If I am just like so bored and I just don't care, at least like make me angry, at least like make me frustrated. But if I just feel nothing, we can't come back from that. Broken Things by Lauren Oliver. I think we're gonna put in kind of meh. It gave me really strong Pretty Little Liars and Bridge to Terabithia vibes, weirdly enough. This friend group was obsessed with this like fictional land when they were younger. They used to write fan fiction about it. One of the girls dies. The rest of the town assumes it was the other two girls who killed her because she died in a way that happened in the first book. But when we got to the reveal at the end of the book of who actually killed this girl, I literally didn't even know who it was because it just like wasn't set up for, in my opinion, well at all. So very forgettable. Just, I really like Lauren Oliver's writing style, which is why I picked this up. This one just wasn't for me. Recursion by Blake Crouch goes into I love Blake Crouch. That's what I've discovered lately. Every one of his books blows my mind. I think I may have liked Recursion even a little bit more than I liked Dark Matter. This one, like, I don't even know how to describe it without somewhat spoiling it for you, so just go into it blind. Again, this is more like physics and science fiction with the pacing of a thriller, and it was so freaking good. Like, you start off thinking the book is about one thing and it does a complete 180 by the end of it. Next we have Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeny. This one's gonna go in pretty good. This one is really hard because I hated the first like 75% of this book. It was so like boring and also off-putting. Like, I just didn't like any of the characters. Everything about this was off-putting to me. And then when you get to the twist, all is right in the world. Like, I still hated the first half. It just was not enjoyable for me to read. But when we get to the twist, I was like, oh, like there's no other way that she could have written the first half. Like, I understood why she made the choice that she did. And then I liked the last part of it. So it was hard for me to get through, but like objectively I can appreciate what she's done here. We're gonna put The Cheerleaders by Kara Thomas either in kind of meh or pretty good. We'll put it in pretty good because honestly it was pretty enjoyable to read. It was just nothing new. Relied on like the tropes of the genre and everything. This is a young adult thriller also. Basically all of the cheerleaders on the squad died and we're following the younger sister of one of them who died. And they all died in different ways. It hasn't even been that long since I've read it, but I'm already kind of forgetting it. I just remember the ending being kind of ridiculous and just like not believable at all, but it was still interesting-ish. It was still like a fun time to read. The passage by Justin Cronin goes into, this I would say leans more on the horror side. This is a vampire, like post-apocalyptic novel. This is adult also. It's the first book in a series. It has a TV adaptation of the first book, which was really disappointing because the book is split into 2 parts and there's a major time jump into the second part. And so the first season of the show, and it got canceled after the first season, only covered that first part of the book before the time jump. And I feel like this book really thrives and picks up after that time jump in the second half. So I would have loved to see that part on TV, but we never got that. So yeah, basically this is a vampire book. The first part of it is kind of how these scientists accidentally create these vampires and we're following them and how they're doing all of this research and they're basically trying to find a cure for all diseases. And as you can imagine, things go wrong, which is how we get part 2, which is like 100 years later, and the remaining survivors of the human race are struggling to survive. They have this really cool compound. It's been so long since I read this book, but it's so freaking memorable and I want to reread it. It was so good. This is definitely one of my all-time favorite books. It's quite the commitment. It's very long. I feel like it's over 900 pages, but so satisfying. So freaking good. The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. I'm gonna put in This is another hit or miss with people. People either love or hate the ending. I loved it. I loved it so much. This is another adult thriller about a live-in nanny in like the Scottish Highlands, I think, and the family that she's nannying for has a smart house, so like there's cameras everywhere and everything can be controlled from an app. And I would just go into this book with the expectation that it's not fast-paced like thrillers usually are. It relies on like a creep out factor, kind of like a slow build horror movie. Like one weird thing will happen and then something else will happen and you start to like piece together all of these weird things and you're trying to figure out what's really going on. I personally really liked the way that it ends. You start off the book with our main character writing to a lawyer from prison because one of the kids that she was nannying died and she has not been able to explain what happened. So you know off the bat that someone's gonna die, but you don't know how. I loved this book. Would highly recommend. Same with Verity by Colleen Hoover. If you've been around on my channel for a while, you're probably so sick of hearing about this book because I rave about it. I loved it. Again, the ending is a hit or miss with people. I'm 100% recommending this because of the ending. I feel like up until the ending, it would have been in like pretty good or very solid. The twist ending is what sold this book for me, but I also know the twist ending absolutely ruined this book for some people. So basically we're following this writer Lowen who is going to finish writing this really famous series for an author after she's in an accident and she can no longer continue. So she moves in with that author's family kind of in the middle of nowhere to go through her notes and stuff in the famous writer's office. And as she's living with this family, she finds an autobiography manuscript in the writer's office that reveals some really disturbing things about this family while she's living with them. Again, I think like all of the buildup towards the end is like decent. It's enjoyable. I had a good time. It's a little bit slow at parts, but the ending I loved. I loved the ending. And so our last book is You by Caroline Kepis. This one's hard ever since the TV show came out for me to talk about because I read this when the book first came out. And so now that the TV show's out, I don't know, I still really enjoy the TV show. I just feel like my opinion on the book has changed. I don't know. I feel like when I first read this, it would have been in because I had never read anything like this. This was something that I read before I really started to get into this genre at all. I do really like the way that it was written. It did thoroughly creep me out. I did read it in like a day. I couldn't put it down. But I think just because now I've read so much more in the genre that I've liked even more than this one, we're gonna put it in very solid. I never read the sequel. I'm not going to. I've heard horrible things about it. But this first book I thought was just like really unique at the time for me and a really, really fun time. So yeah, those are all of my rankings. I'm pretty happy with that. No second guessing this time around. If you read any of these books, I would love to hear what you thought of them. If you agree or disagree with my ranking, or tell me what your favorite mystery thriller or horror novel is, because then I can add it to my TBR. Dean! I'm sorry if you can hear my cats meowing in the background. They just have a lot to say today. So yeah, that's gonna be it for today's video. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. If you're new here, I would love it if you would subscribe and stick around. I put up at least 2 to 3 new videos every single week. All of my links are down below in the description if you want to follow me elsewhere. My book, The Anti-Virginity Pact, comes out next month, June 16th, 2020. You can pre-order it now. The links are down below. Other than that, I think I'll just see you guys in another video very, very soon. Bye.
So hit me. So hit me. So hit me. First a confession. With you I feel a connection. With